groups of emitters?
Yeah, thanks. Actually, well, this is a good kind of continuation of what Bill was saying, because what I'm going to talk about here is using particularly the argument all implies can in terms of collective agents or potential collective agents regarding the climate change. And actually what I'm going to do over here is I'm going to use that argument arguing against a certain type of collective approaches, particularly the one Elizabeth Cripps has been proposed to. So in that sense, yeah, I'm going to talk about pretty much kind of similar kind of issues that Bill was talking about. Of course, I'm going to stick to that argument that you were arguing against over there. So let's see if we can discuss about that later on. Yeah. So this is a paper which defends attributions of climate-related responsibilities to individual emitters. I compare, as I say, two alternative ways to conceptualize emitters' accountability for the climate-related harm and their correlative duty to prevent it. So the collectivistic approach, the Cripps one, accepts the view that there is no basis for attributing responsibilities to at the individual level, and argues therefore that emitters' responsibilities should be understood primarily as collective. On the basis of their collective responsibilities, then, in this Cripps approach, the individuals then acquire their derivative individual duties to act in ways that contributes to the required collective level action. And in this paper, however, I'm going to argue that turning to the collective level, at least in this, once we are talking about the kind of accountability-based duties of emitters, is actually unnecessary and opens the approach, the collectivistic approach, to those certain type of objections which challenge the emitters' potential capability to act together in order to discharge their collective duty. And then I advocate an alternative view which holds that the same epistemic conditions about emitters which justify emitters' collective accountability in Cripps' view can be used to justify the individual accountability. And so my main argument is that people are individually accountable once they are knowingly participating in the carbon-intensive ways of acting. And this individual accountability then might enhance their collective capability to discharge their collective duty to prevent the harm they are causing together. So, as a starting from some sort of preliminaries, I should say that, well, I accept the kind of view that, well, climate change is anthropogenic, so we humans are causing it, at least a serious part of it, and it's causing serious harm to very many people. And I make a note over there that, of course, in these kind of speeches, you always have to mention the non-identity problem once you're talking about harming, and I think there are plausible ways to circumvent the non-identity problem in these cases. But I'm not going to be talking too much about that. I don't go into details. And I acknowledge that what I'm concentrating on here in duties of humanity and people, in terms of climate change, I'm concentrating on those that are following the no harm principle, in the sense that there's a certain group of people, which I call emitters, who are causing the harm, and they are because they are the causes of harm, they have the pro tanto duty to refrain from inflicting the harm and at least repair and compensate the harm inflicted. And what I call emitters, I borrow this from Cripps. I mean emitters, those emitting above the level such that were all to emit at that level, climate change would not be worsened, and whose emissions are avoidable without the loss them to some of their fundamental interests. Okay, so as we have been, many others have been talking about these kind of problems that we have once we are trying to identify people who might be the emitters, and once we are trying to identify those who might be the group of people that might be able to act against preventing the climate change. So I just shortly offer these two kind of problems that have been motivated some people to turn to the collectivistic level. So first of all, it's fairly popular view among climate ethicists that we are not causing individual harm. So our individual actions of emitting are not causing harm by isolation. Even our lifetime emissions probably are not able to cause harm isolated from the aggregate emissions. And while there's some people who have dismissed this kind of view, John Broome, John Nault, for instance, they have argued that, well, it's not the thing that actually that your isolated emissions would be making a difference in terms of the resulting harm, but there's a certain type of expectation, because it's first of all problem, there's a certain expectation that you would be the one, your emissions would be the one who trigger then the additional next marginal harm. But Cripps, for instance, and many others have argued that in the case of climate change, it seems to be the case that because it's so complex and the problem and the causal chain involves many certain type of unlinearities and it's complex kind of a causal chain, the expectation that you might be triggering any additional harm is so low, extremely so low, that if you would allow that such an expectation would be account in applying the non-individual harm principle, that would make the principle too demanding, implausible demands. So rather than saying that we are really making a difference, quite many are committed to view that the situation in terms of climate change is at least normatively, even if it's not totally causally overdetermined, is normatively overdetermined in the sense that individual acts are unnecessary to the occurrence of harm, and then they have no normatively significant marginal effect to the occurrence of harm. Secondly, in order to fulfill the political duty to prevent the harm, of course, no individual can do by her own acts anything. So we cannot prevent the resulting harm by acting alone, and even it's also unlikely that any combined performance of isolated individual actions. So if we all, it might be the case if we all decided to reduce our emissions, that would be possible. Of course, that would be all that would be needed. But because the emissions are resulting from very different ways of collective action and embedded in the social structures, more likely it's the case that what is required is a certain type of cooperative, organized action involving substantial proportion of the emitters. So, because of this, due to this highly collective and deeply collective nature of the anthropogenic climate change, it is no surprise that normally and traditionally it has been taken that responsibility of those kind of resolving or facing those kind of problems, addressing that kind of problem, have been taken to be the responsibility of institutional agents like states. And many climatists seem to be arguing that that's the case also in the case of climate change, that, for instance, Neil Armstrong is favoring the view that, well, it's the states or governments who should act because they have the capacity and political power to do the real solution, or for the real solutions to climate change. And then, as analyzed by many policy analysts, effective efforts reducing the greenhouse gas emissions to the levels required, for instance, by the latest report of Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, require large change in international cooperation, requires large-scale international cooperation backed by enforceable global treaty. However, yet the difficulties at the international level have decreased hopes for achieving that type of global agreement, at least in the near future. For instance, Gardiner, one name, has been arguing that it might be the case even that we are lacking the proper appropriate institutional agents that would be able to address a certain type of intergenerational international problem like climate change. And as we heard yesterday from Stephen arguing that if we follow a certain type of traditional way of legitimate political authority, we might say that once, if those are the existing institutional agents, they are the one who we have delegated the responsibility in these kind of cases, collective agent problem cases. When they are failure to act in a proper way, it seems to be the case, if we follow the delegation model, that the the duty and accountability falls back to the individual emitters again. They should organize between themselves in order to address the problem or create new novel ways, organize new novel ways of organizing themselves, create a new institutional agent, for instance, or something else. Kind of citizen movement envisioned by Jameson. So, however, as the emitters do not form an organized group capable of acting together, but are rather an unstructured group of people around the world, there seems to be no agent that would be able to discharge this duty falling to the individuals. Acting together requires that certain minimal requirements be satisfied. And I think, well, at least the certain kind of conditions that individuals need to be able to set the collective goals and share a certain type of mutual belief and knowledge regarding other people's contributions to that goal. And, of course, maintaining that what implies can. Situations like this have motivated certain type of collectivistic views that assign moral duties to unstructured and random collections of individuals if they are potentially capable of acting together to discharge the collective duty. And this is Elizabeth Cribb's model, actually. It's kind of an application of this kind of view borrowed from Larry May, for instance, in his climate change. So, yeah, she accepts those two things I have been saying about here. No individual harm you, and that we need to get strong collective action in order to prevent. And this means that she accepts the view that we cannot apply the no harm principle at the individual level. But, according to her, we can apply the principle at the collective level where the harm is caused and where it can be prevented. So, according to Cripps, emitters, they are collectively accountable for the serious harm resulting from the combination of the avoidable individual actions, and therefore they have a moral duty to prevent it. And as a kind of a derivation from the collective duty, individual acquire the individual duties to act in a way that take part in the collective effort, if that's in place, but once that's absent, they have a duty to promote, and that's the reason he calls them promotional duties, promote such a collective effort, or formation of such a effort. So, there are two general objections that have been raised against this kind of collective approach. The first objections, which is over there, questions our ability to identify the relevant harm-causing collectivity once the situation is captured, like the situation of over-determination. And the second objection questions the capacity of an unstructured group of emitters to discharge their collective duty. And in this paper, I accept Cripps' answer to the first objection, but I think the second one is decisive against Cripps' collectivist approach. So, according to the first objection, it can be formulated as follows. If the situation is the case of overdetermination and any emitter's individual contributory act, assuming that there are sufficient others acting in the same way, is unnecessary to the occurrence of the resulting collective harm, then each emitter seems to be warranted to ask why she should count as a member of harm-causing collectivity and acquire any correlative duties to prevent it. And to answer the reply to this objection, Cripps sets the following three conditions. So there's predictability condition 1, which says that individuals acted in certain ways which are in aggregate cause harm and which they were aware or could reasonably be expected to have foreseen would in aggregate cause harm, although each only intentionally performed her own act. Secondly, they were aware and could reasonably be expected to have foreseen that there were enough others similarly placed and so similarly motivated to act for the combined actions to bring about the harm. And thirdly, the harm was collectively avoidable. Individuals would have been able to avoid the harm by acting otherwise, which they could have been done at less than comparable cost to themselves. So, Cripps gives a sort of examples, for instance, footbridge, but for the reason of time, I'm going to skip this and just say that I'm in a way arguing that using those conditions, I think the first objection can be replied, which means that consequently then Cripps argued that once we can identify using those conditions the group of emitters who are accountable for certain type of harm, which is here, we have the group over here, which fulfills the predictability and avoidability conditions. We have a asterisk over here, who are collectively accountable the overdetermined part Z. And after that, then, by applying the no-harm principle, this is a schedule of the Cripps approach. At the collective level, the harm-causing collectivity A asterisk then acquires collective duty to prevent Z from occurring. And because in the fulfillment of the collective duty to prevent Z, members of A asterisk, who are collectively accountable, are mutually dependent. No individual member can prevent Z from occurring by acting alone or in isolation, but if this A asterisk would organize itself as a group, A italics, that is capable to act together, then their accountable group emitters would be able to prevent Z. And because of this mutual dependence in fulfilling their collective duty, members of I asterisk have, I have it here weekly, I'm going to explain that soon, duty to form this A italics in order to fulfill their collective duty to prevent the Z. And as a member of this potential group of A, each member of A asterisk then requires the individual duty to do their part in organizing and forming of A italics. The general problem in this approach, where I'm following those arguments made by Lothar Schmidt and Anders Wenkelbecker, for instance, and Bob Goodin, is of course that as A asterisk is itself an unstructured group of people unable to act together, there is no agent that would be able to discharge the duty of A asterisk. But according to Cripp's approach, that's not a problem, because A asterisk could potentially organize itself as by A italics to be able to prevent Z. And that's the reason he calls her duty weakly collective, meaning that A asterisk, which is not yet a collective agent in the strong sense, has a duty to organize itself as A italics capable of collective action. In other words, members of A asterisk have a duty to together form A italics. However, in order to hold this joint duty to form A italics, members of A asterisk need to be able, or at least need to have enough potential to act together. This potential, in turn, is dependent on whether or not sufficient number of members of A asterisk are contributing to forming of A. But given this, the only plausible way to understand the derivative duties of the members of A asterisk is that these duties are conditional on whether or not other members will do their contributions. And if members of A asterisk has a good reason to believe that sufficient numbers of others are not fulfilling their derivative duty, and it is therefore unlikely that the group A that would be able to prevent Z will be formed, the member seems to be not obliged to perform their individual contributory acts. And if sufficient number of A asterisks have a good reason to believe that it's not going to be likely that enough others contribute, then A asterisk doesn't have enough potential even to form together the group A italics that would be able to discharge A asterisk collective duty. Of course, to be sure, there are many unstructured groups that have enough potential for acting together. For instance, Cripps gives another type of, based on the earlier example, gives another example in her text where there's 50 people approaching the bridge that can only hold 15 people safely, and there are some children beneath the bridge that would be harmed if enough people approach the bridge at the same time, risking making the risk that the bridge will collapse. In these kind of cases, if the people are able to see and communicate and influence others, it's quite plausible that they are able to form and organize themselves, as it is in this example, to act together in order to prevent the lifetime collapse of the bridge. But, so in these kind of cases, it seems to be the case to say that the 50 people in this example are able to contribute to forming of a italics that would be able to prevent the harm, and those people also have good reasons to believe that enough others are likely to make their contributions. So the italics that is able to act together, it's going to be formed. But, as Bill was also mentioning over there in his speech, the worry that in the case of climate change of many is that we don't have this type of collection. The people in the climate change, they are unstructured and globally unconnected to each other. And because of that, it seems to be the case that at least the belief condition is not easily fulfilled. And if that's the case, it seems to be the case that there is not going to be the likelihood that there's going to be a sort of collective that would be able to prevent and discharge the collective duty of emitters, to prevent the harm. It's unlikely that it's going to be formed, and if the people believe that it's going to be unlikely that it's going to be formed, the individual derivative duties seem to be ceasing. So my suggestion over here is actually quite simple. As argued by Bob Goodin, one way to avoid this type of mutual release of individual duties of contributing to a climate effort on the basis of others likely inaction, is to understand the act that each individual has a duty to undertake as her personal engage in the required joint action. Similarly, I propose that if the duty to promote the collective effort of preventing the climate-related harm could also be assigned directly on each emitter, rather than seen as a derivative from the emitter's collective duty that is dependent on the potential capacity to act together, we might be able to defeat the second objection. So my suggestion in this paper is that the predictability and avoidability conditions of CRIPS provide also conditions for ascribing some personal accountability to climate-related harm emitters. And I just quickly give you a certain type of idea about how I think about it here. So I'm borrowing here the Christopher Putz's notion of participatory-based accountability, which CRIPS rejects. And the reason why she rejects this is that, according to CRIPS, there seems to be that we don't have that certain type of conditions of intentional action are not fulfilled in terms of climate change. But what I'm saying over here and try to argue on the basis, I have a quotation here from Christopher Kutsch, that actually the requirements, what at least Christopher Kutsch sets as conditions for intentional participation, they come pretty close to those same similar epistemic conditions that Proust herself puts her own collectivistic principle that we saw earlier over there, the epistemic predictability conditions. So, Kutsch writes, a set of individuals can jointly intentionally G, even though some, and perhaps all, do not intend the G to be realized, or do not even intend to contribute to G, but only know that their actions are likely to contribute to the occurrence of G. So, I think it seems to me pretty plausible that using the same epistemic principle, people are knowingly contributing something like climate change that is likely to have very serious harm, likely to cause very serious harm, gives us justified reasons to attribute this type of participatory-based individual accountability. And what that adds here, and that's my argument. So, as we saw earlier, the organization of this italics that will be able to collective action faces a certain type of collective action problem, the people belonging to that group, a asterisk. So, in this, to overcome of this kind of collective action problems, we need to change participant reasons and expectations about others' action. And what I argue here, it's actually the personal accountability that we can attribute on the basis of this that can make the required changes in personal, in the reasons for actions and expectations of others. Because it gives each emitter a kind of unconditional, or at least less stringent, reason to commit herself to engage in organizing the collective effort and warrant others to expect such engagement from each emitter. So in that sense, we change the structure, or not the structure, but the preferences and certain type of reasoning behind each emitter in this collective action problem. I made kind of a short comment over there what kind of collective action problems there might be, but basically that's how I see the situation. And finally, I want to say something. Because one of the reasons that many people, for instance, Elizabeth Briggs, seem to be rejecting the attribution of individual accountability is that because it would open the door to blame people solely on the basis of their membership in certain type of carbon-intensive societies or carbon-intensive ways of life, whereas I think that if we think about and understand blameworthiness on the basis of that, whether those people, emitters, whether they are responding to those reasons that are given to them by the individual accountability, I don't see why that type of blameworthiness, at least understood as kind of a change in the attitudes of others, as kind of a modification of their attitudes to that person, might be justified as well. But I stop now because I'm over time.
Thank you. So we have about 4 minutes for discussion before we continue discussion with Fulmars.
Okay, so although I think that they're non-energy collective, I think you're right about the emitters, right? I think the emitters are not a collective that can have... Okay, that's not a question. Okay. But I've argued that the belief... You say they fail collective capacity because of the belief condition. I've argued against the belief condition. I'm wondering whether a different condition might get you the same result. And it's... So I don't think that... I wonder whether one might be better than the belief condition is something like a salience of membership condition. Okay? So the thought would be that, say, a difference between the collective of emitters and the collective of everybody is we're all aware on some level who the members of everybody is, but we're not so aware of who the membership of the emitters is. So it's not really clear who we've got to organise with.
I think, well, first of all, starting with whether we can identify, I think roughly we can, using a certain type of metric of how much people are generally, as they are members of certain societies, what is the, I think it's quite easily, at least at a rough level, to identify certain type of people who are really emitting over that level that would be not worsening the climate change. So in that sense, I think, yeah. But coming to the what kind of conditions, I was looking at the Felix conditions over there, and because I'm not quite sure how, because your collective, those criteria over there, they were only about whether it's capable to act. And you don't seem to take the case that it's the collective, it's direct to individual. They don't. Are they gonna have individual duties as members of those? Do they have?
Yes, I think they do. I think the individual duties are derivative.
Yeah, and they, in a similar way as Cripps is characterizing the situation, they are derivative from the ones that the collective have, then the individuals do have an individual duty to promote certain type of organization. But because my argument over here was not was actually against the view that whether you can plausibly make the case that under what circumstances individuals then have that individual duty. And I think even though we would recognize and loosen the belief conditions in that way, in order to be able to say that there is a certain collective, that's not an agent, but we can attribute responsibility, obligation to that entity. Even then, I would say that you would need to answer that in what circumstances individuals are required to fulfill their individual duties. And over there, I think you would need a certain type of conditions about, epistemic conditions about what kind of belief they do have, whether the others are sufficiently participating. Once you're thinking about this derivative, how much they can be.
Yeah, I just think that you can't rely on the belief condition to say that the collective can't act or can't organise.
But it's
so you need something else.
Well, we can continue that. Yeah, so.
I'm afraid we're out of time, but
Yeah.
thank you.
Yeah.